Right. Welcome to Yellow Chair Collective, the podcast. Today we have the founder and CEO of Lion's Den, Lauren DeVera, located in Washington, D.C. Lauren, what's the weather like in Washington, D.C.?
What a confusing question because it's Washington, D.C. So it's a little bit of hot and a little bit of cold, and you have to dress layered because you just don't know what you're going to get.
It's the same way in Los Angeles. Lately, there's been like a huge heat wave, but I'm actually I want to dive into just your sensory awareness as a dancer.
Mm.
Because for those that don't know what Lion's Den is, like it's dance and mental health fused together. But I'm curious around, as a dancer choreographer at Lion's Den, how have you become attuned to just the world around you as a dancer?
Mm. That's such a great question. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Helen. It's just such an honor to be in this space with you. And when we
Likewise.
first connected, I was like, this is meant to be. This is my soul sister that I haven't met yet.
Yes.
But yeah, to answer that question, body awareness, how we move in the Lion's Den believes that how we move in our body is how we move in the world, and how we feel in our body also impacts how we move and feel in the world.
Mm.
With dance, with an art form that has us looking in the mirror, at least it did back in the day when I was growing up in the studio, you are so aware of every tiny little thing when it comes to your body and things in your spaces. I also identify as a highly sensitive person. So sounds, sights, smells feel extremely heightened to me personally. And I think as a mover and as a dance artist, we are expressing what we are seeing in our world without necessarily using our voice. And it's a beautiful way to kind of challenge ourselves to figure out different ways of expressing a story or an experience through the body.
Mm.
So yeah, and I think especially with injuries, especially I've had an ACL tear and a recent hand injury, is just how in tune I am with how every little thing is feeling, which can sometimes be a blessing and a curse. Like sometimes I wish I wasn't this attuned because I wouldn't notice so many different things. So I think it's really depending upon the day and how you look at it. Some people say they want more awareness. I think sometimes too much awareness can also be something that kind of hurts you a little bit as well.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I struggle with the opposite scale of being too aware. I don't know if you do as a highly sensitive person, but I consider myself an empath. And especially as a therapist, I feel like I struggle with being too aware of my emotional state. And sometimes that
Yes.
gets in the way of the art of just like being with another person and doing the
Yes.
dance of the therapeutic practice. I guess, one of the things that I just want to compliment you on is being in this space with you, even though we're remote. I feel your energy and you have so much. Like, I came into this interview a little bit fatigued because I've been working
Yeah.
since like early morning and it's evening for you there. It's early evening for us here in Los Angeles. And like talking with you, even though we've only been talking for maybe 10, 15 minutes, feels like a breath of fresh air.
Mm.
And so I'm curious about, like, as a multi-passionate entrepreneur, as a creative, I guess what brought you into a space where you could be high energy? Because I do feel that from you in this interview.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you for naming that. And yeah, the reality too that, we're recording this on a Monday
Yeah.
and right. And typically
Yes.
we are more tired on a Monday. Um, and I would say it's reciprocity. I think when I'm with other people that elicit that type of energy from me, it's a lot easier. So I would say I heard this from a friend, Kiana, that you're an expander so that someone like you would expand my
Mm,
energy rather than deplete it or suck the life out of it.
that's
So I
good.
would say, yeah, I think it's reciprocity. And as far as multi-passionate and energy, I don't know if we talked about human design when we first spoke to each other.
Mm-mm. You've never talked to me about human design.
Okay. Are you familiar with human design?
Human design is in like understanding how you as a human interact with the world. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's like based off of your birth chart. It's similar to
Oh,
astrology, but it's it's less about like the personality traits and more about how you give your energy and how you receive energy.
Interesting.
Uh-huh. So I'm a generator. There's like 4 to 5 different types: manifesting generator, generator, projector, reflector. Okay, that's all I can remember in this moment. I have to be real. I'm a generator, which means that I have to be lit up by what I'm doing.
Mm,
I'm not, a lot of messaging in the world tells us to push through, to work through the frustration, to force things sometimes. And that's the exact opposite of what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to, if I notice there's frustration or something doesn't feel right, I need to honor that and listen to that, which is very similar to processing boundaries and really being in tune with what you need in a given moment. And as I've gotten older, I'm in my mid 30s, I'm much more attuned to what I need in a given moment. And so, as I was preparing for this, I was napping beforehand. And I'm like, okay, we got to put some makeup on. We got to look cute, like do the things that we need to come with aliveness.
yeah.
And I think as a multi passionate creative and entrepreneur, and folks like yourself, where we're in front of the room, we're leading the room, you have to have an energy. And so,
Mm,
what are the things that you need to do to refuel that on a regular basis? Because I know that energy for me is my currency. It also
mm,
means like when I'm at my best, right? This can also impact my income, right? I facilitate, I teach. If I come in with this low energy or if I don't bring that presence into the room, I'm not able to execute the way that I normally would. So, yeah.
that's good, Lauren. What stuck out to me from what you said is, as someone that's leading from in front of the room, you have to have an energy. And I think that that is actually a gift of what people call a highly sensitive person.
Hmm.
And before we dive into anything deeper, I want people to kind of be taken through your life and have an understanding for you, because you weren't always like somebody that was great at teaching and was great at leading a team. And so I know that you're a Filipina, you're born in San Diego, your parents moved to Virginia, you come from a blended family. And so, walk me through how being a highly sensitive person manifested in the early stages of your life. Just asked you a really hard question, didn't I? Because I saw that
I
face.
I mean, that's why I love talking to you, because it's just like you asked the questions that really hit home. So the question was, how did I notice like my high sensitivity manifest growing up?
Yeah, the question for me is, I people see you right now, right? An entrepreneur,
Mm.
a creative, a dancer. But the as a therapist, I know that being a highly sensitive person is almost like having the gift that you don't know you have. And so sometimes an untamed gift can create this sense of like difference and isolation and pariah. And so, as a highly sensitive person, I can imagine, coming from a blended family, that you probably felt different and you felt alone and you felt like you were too much. And so, walk me through, like, your parents were married before, you were blended in this family,
Mhm.
you were already born into a somewhat chaotic environment, right? So, how did what did you start to notice as a child growing up as a highly sensitive person? What were the early signs? And like, what did you think it was? Like, what were some of your early judgments around that, you know?
Wow, you are a great therapist, Helen.
Thank you. I received that.
I'm like, this is a session, y'all. Y'all are tuning into a private session. Um, no, you phrased that and articulated that so eloquently. These gifts that we're given, and how do we tame these gifts, right? And as a child, obviously I didn't have language for any of this stuff, right? Most of us
Right.
haven't. We're feeling all these emotions. It's feeling chaos, and you don't even know that that's probably not normal, right? Because it's your normal, and no one
Hmm.
has named it as a thing that needs to be worked on or fixed. And not necessarily that sensitivity is a bad thing, but when it's not right contained or
Right.
managed in a way that works for you, it could be your downfall.
Hey everyone, I've got some exciting news coming up from Yellow Chair Collective that you won't want to miss. First up, on October 25th, 2024, in Chicago, head to Barbara's Bookstore for a special book talk and signing by the co authors of Where I Belong, co founders of Yellow Chair Collective, Linda Yoon and Sujin Lee. It's a fantastic opportunity to hear more about their incredible work and grab a signed copy. Then, on October 26th, also in Chicago, it's the CAATCH Catch annual fall conference in 2024 themed Embracing the Story of Us, creating wholeness and identity and community. This conference is all about building a stronger sense of self and connection within our communities, and it's a must attend for anyone passionate about identity and inclusion. And finally, on November 2nd, join us in sunny Los Angeles for the Entwine Retreat 2024. This is the third annual retreat, and it promises to be an inspiring weekend full of growth, connection, and transformation. Mark your calendars, get registered, and I hope to see you there. Now, back to the show.
So as a kid and as just growing up in a blended family, I think I told you that one of my biggest wounds is belonging and feeling left out. And so when that is one of your core wounds, you recognize that in every single space. And even now as an adult, like even in this past week, I could sense myself sometimes feeling that before I enter certain spaces of like, okay, are we about to feel this feeling of like we don't fit in or we're not included? And we're clearly the same person that we were when we were little. We're just in these bigger bodies and we have more language to articulate. But I think the sensitivities really showed up as I was just witnessing my parents interacting with each other and just noticing things that other people don't name. Mm-hmm. And as a child too, I think I'm so grateful that I had art as maybe a form of escape. At the time it wasn't escape. It was just something that I was doing. I was in dance classes all the time. And I think in my own personality, always just caring so much about how other people felt in the room. I think that's what I was looking for. Was I was uncomfortable if I noticed someone wasn't having fun, and that still shows up today. Or I feel uncomfortable if I notice someone is sad or they're not doing their best. And so being highly attuned to that at such a young age is the superpower that kind of created what we see today with the Lion's Den, which is a welcoming, friendly dance and wellness space. And the way that I go about that is really reaching for the one. I grew up in a church too, and bringing that lens of like looking for that one person who really needs to be seen and felt and heard and reminded that they're valued. And while we're not exactly saying those words, you are experiencing that in the way that we present energy when you walk into our space. So all these things as a kid, ultimately are showing up now as an adult. And this is something that I teach in my group coaching program titled Roots to Fruits, is to return to your childhood joys and your just natural inclinations. Because oftentimes we tuck those away. We think that those were just for childhood or those things were just for fun, when in reality, those are so tightly woven with like the DNA of who you are today. And so that desire and need to create spaces where everyone feels welcome is really my superpower.
Imagine though, because you are a generator and you do sense someone's deep-seated loneliness, that it takes a toll on you.
Yes.
And so like, you're talking about as a child, you started to notice the interactions with your parents. How did that sensitivity almost like get in the way of you and seeing you as a child, or even in romantic relationships or friendships? Did you struggle with boundaries as a child? Did you struggle to say no? Was it hard to really understand who you were outside of those capacities or sensitivities?
Yeah, I think it was weird when my parents divorced, because I was that one kid that was like, oh, I'm glad they're getting a divorce. Like
that's hard to say to someone when you're young, that's real.
At the age of 10, I was just like, good, they will be happier. And I don't know if my mom's going to listen to this podcast or if my dad's going to, but I think I did experience one of those things where one of my parents is talking about the other parent in a negative way.
Mm.
and you experience that every single day for 20 years or so, that stuff starts to become ingrained, right? That language, we find ourselves talking like our parents or saying these snarky or nasty or not nice things that we heard growing up, and it shows up now as an adult. And I've had to do a lot of work into kind of retraining myself to think before I speak and to not say things simply for the sake of saying them because, that's what I witnessed as a kid. So, yeah, I think witnessing them and thinking about myself in that space, I think a lot of my memories probably blocked from that. But now as an adult, I think the thing that I'm craving is that intimacy with my parents, which isn't necessarily there. And I'm sure I've searched for that intimacy in my romantic partnerships, like that
Mm.
desire to be known, that desire to have questions asked that really touch the heart. That's why I enjoy talking to you, because you ask these questions that really make me think. And that's what
Mm.
I desire in a partnership and in a friendship and in a relationship. And so when I'm in spaces where I don't feel like someone is sitting there with me with that type of presence, it's really hard.
That's so good. I don't know if this is because I don't want to make assumptions here, but I grew up in a space that was similar, and I feel like Filipino culture is very communal. But when you grow up detached from that type of close family bondage or community, and this is my experience, I don't want to speak for every Filipino, but notice that my parents would do the same. And then even about me, and it would result in a breach of trust and sometimes an intimacy in order to reach a place of like complete and utter safety to share what you need to share. There does need to be this understanding that like safe with you, and I feel like when you grow up hearing your story, it's almost like this losslessness that you felt as a child of like, where do I belong? Like, I don't really feel safe in my house. I don't feel safe. I'm sure not like physically, but like emotionally unsafe. And so like as an adult, I want people to understand that you're not this perfect put together person, that you have this story behind you. And so as an adult, like how did you begin to search? What was your hero's journey of, oh my gosh, like I am achieving in these areas and I'm doing wonderful, but why? What is this? Take people through that journey of
Mm.
lack of belonging, finding your gift, but feeling like it was incomplete, these wounds.
Ooh, Helen. I wish we were in person so I could hug you and
Mm.
cry. Just kidding.
I have that effect on people.
You too. I'm like, what's your rising sign? Do we
I don't
know?
know. I
Oh my
really don't
gosh.
know.
You're giving me rising I'm a Scorpio rising, so yeah, we love these deep questions that like totally just like stab us in the heart in a good way.
Mm.
Um yeah, the question, where do I belong? I'm sure a lot of people listening to this can relate to that as children of immigrants and whether they're adoptees or not. Yeah, I think, can you repeat the question because I just lost it?
Yeah, like I think that everyone on this planet has felt some semblance or slice of, I don't really feel included,
Yeah.
or I don't feel safe
Hmm.
emotionally. If you are in a domestically violent relationship, I do have to say, like, please seek the help that you need, find safety in other places as a caveat, but we're talking mostly about emotional safety. Being that you were highly sensitive while simultaneously going through the trauma of emotional unsafety, how did you begin to heal that? What were some of the mistakes that you made in that search? What were the right decisions you made in that search? There is a thread of like art was my escape, right? And it eventually became your business and it became a way that you are now teaching others to heal from those wounds. But what's the messy middle of
Mm,
like, how did you get there?
yeah, the messy middle. Um, you know, Emotional safety. I like mentioned earlier, I think I was finding that in my romantic partnerships. Like
Yeah.
it was an escape in some form. And I didn't realize that in high school, college, post college. You're kind of just living life. I think I started to have more language and awareness into my healing journey probably around 2017, where in my newsletter and other spaces, I identified 2013 through 2017 as like the dark ages for me, where there were just so many small traumatic things that happened between an ACL tear, my mom moving across the country, a public loss of a brick and mortar of a business, which beautifully, led to the Lion's Den. But yeah, the messy middle, I think, is, or the thing that really helped was the pandemic. Like a lot of
Mm.
people, when 2020 came around, we had no choice but to stay at home and be with our own thoughts and kind of go even more into the introspective journey, which I was already kind of doing starting in 2017. But when the pandemic arrived, it just forced me to confront how I feel about a lot of different things. So when there was like the rise of the AAPI hate crimes, that was like my, I guess, racial mixed race awakening into
Mm.
how do I relate to the Asian identity as a mixed person? Why am I not feeling certain things that I feel like other people in the Asian community are feeling? Why am I not as passionate about some of these things that other Asians are passionate about? So those things, along with taking a look at my relationship with work as well. I think as a multi passionate entrepreneur, when you are in a career where you love what you do, it's really easy to just kind of stay so focused in that work that other things just kind of, they're like happening in the background.
Mhm.
And I think I had to really get clear on, okay, professionally, I'm doing well, I'm doing great, but how am I doing internally? How am I navigating these up and down emotions, not only of being an entrepreneur, but within my personal life?
Mm.
Are there things that are being compromised because I'm so
Yeah.
focused on my entrepreneurship?
I want to slow people down because I don't think you touched on this, but your mom is Filipina and your dad is
So my mom is half Filipina, half Polish, and my
okay.
dad is full Filipino. Obviously, there's like other stuff trickled in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, for context, I am one quarter Polish, and if we break it down into fractions like that,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, I'm part Filipino, part Polish.
And when you talked about, how the Lion's Den was birthed out of this like breaking of a brick and mortar business, the pandemic forcing you to really evaluate your patterns with work, with relationships, walk people through that. Because I mean, I heard that when we first met, but I do have the notes. You danced through high school and college, did a dance summer program, you tore your ACL, and you decided to pursue a job. Well, you quit your job to pursue dance. And then 2013 to 2017 were the dark years. Your mom moves to California at 25 in 2013, and you start to feel abandonment because you felt like the main parent in your life left. And so 25 to 29, take me through that moment in your life, the dark years.
Man, it was it was like a fish out of water, and I name those as the dark years. And I sometimes I feel like I'm feeling a sense of that darkness now, like just for full transparency. I'm like,
Just
there's
thinking about it.
yeah, there's
Wow.
well, like in this current year of 2024, I'm like, there is something that's shifting internally for me, and I think collectively for all of us. But yeah, as far as those specific years, it was financial hardship, having an ACL tear when I had no health insurance, and I ended up using credit cards to
Wow.
pay for physical therapy. And I was like, well, I want to see a good therapist. So I saw a therapist that was specific for dancers and ice skaters. So even more expensive than regular therapy.
Mm.
Um, I think the biggest shift was having grace and forgiveness for Lauren in those years. I think a lot of us can relate to a former version of ourselves just struggling and doing whatever they could to survive. And like I was in survival mode. And when I look back, I'm like, dang, she really made it through a lot of those hardships. So that now today, where I'm at, I'm like, if I can get through that, I can get through this. But like we were saying earlier, the awareness, sometimes when you have that much awareness and when you have that much runway to look back on, you can also fall into the trap of being like, oh my gosh, I don't want to relive the dark years. I don't want to
Mm.
repeat the same mistakes. I don't want to relive that financial trauma. I don't want to relive that loss or that grief. And so then we're like, that can tap into like kind of sabotaging where we're at currently, because we're trying to do all these, we're trying to prevent things from happening instead of just letting things flow. And so, long
How do you
story
not do
short,
that?
yeah, I think long story short is like, now I'm getting to a space of, how do I accept what's happening? How do I release my grip on things that I think might be falling apart, whatever that is? How do I, yeah, literally in a place of surrender, drop my shoulders, take a deep breath, and feel my feelings completely? And at the time of this recording, my feelings have been all over the place these last 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just like, it is what it is. And I'm a believer. So I'm like, you know what, God, if I don't, it's not my job to figure out the answer. So
Mm.
let me take a break. And I'm just going to give you all the things that I'm worried about and scared about and unsure about, and trust your timing. And I think the answer is, how do we lean into releasing our grip on the timing of how things need to happen, or the outcome, or having the clarity that we're waiting for? I think that's, for me, is like, I feel like I'm in a season of waiting for clarity around certain things in my life, but I don't know when that clarity is going to come. But what I can control is slowing down long enough to hear the clarity that comes through, or being in solitude long enough so that I can be with myself and really reflect. Because I think previous Lauren would try to just stay busy and avoid those feelings and just act like everything's okay. And now more mature Lauren is like, let's feel it. Let's sit with it. Let's cry our eyes out and feel release at the end of that. And I think even my relationship to crying has changed. I think in the past, I would just associate crying with like having a breakdown, when now it's like that cry is a release, and it
Mm.
opens up space for breakthrough.
That's so good. What are three pieces of wisdom you learned in those dark years from 25 to 29?
Mm, three pieces of
Because
wisdom.
wasn't like a because you started getting into yoga, you were
Mm-hmm.
part of a street dance community and stayed in New York for a week. You started
Mm-hmm.
getting into yoga, mindfulness, positive psychology, but you were still dating the wrong people. And you had the business partnership with a past partner that ended up fizzling out, right, because
Mm-hmm.
of differences.
Mm,
And so, like, when you think back to that time, what is it about that darkness that only darkness could teach you?
so good. Yeah, I think one thing was remaining anchored in what God called me to do.
Mm.
So there was this inexplicable feeling, nudge, calling to continue the lion's den despite what had happened before. Because before that brick and mortar, I was doing my own thing. And I think that was a vision. God was like, it's still your thing. Even though this brick and mortar ended and this relationship ended, I gave you this vision. So I think a lot of people were surprised that I still continued to grow and go with the lion's den when multiple entities told me to stop. So yeah, I think, how in tune are you with the spirit or whatever it is you believe in? And I just continued the lion's den. That's the only thing in my life that I've probably been the most consistent with outside of my faith.
Mm.
And number two was just continuous growth as far as personal development and learning. So I really let curiosity lead the way. So I teach a class within my program called Curiosity is Your Compass.
Mm.
And you can replace the word curiosity with intuition, whatever you want to replace it with. But any inkling, anything that came up for me, I followed it. And at the
Love
time,
that.
as a dancer, people were like, oh, you do yoga too? Oh, you do mindfulness too? It's kind of like frowned upon that I was doing so many different things. And mind you, I wasn't doing it all at the same time. I was just getting certified slowly because I was interested in these things and I didn't have any pressure to monetize it. So yeah, I think letting curiosity be your compass, following and growing in the things that interest you was also healing for me. Learning more about yoga and mindfulness and positive psychology were really great tangible tools that I could use outside of my faith. I think especially when you grow up as a Christian, you know, you're told to do the same things, pray, read the Bible. And it's like those are great things. And I definitely still do those things, but having tangible things of like how to reframe my mindset or how to notice the inner critic or how to exhale longer when I'm in a moment of stress. Those things were extremely helpful for me. And then I think the third tip would just be I have a podcast episode on this. It's under expanding my capacity for uncomfortable emotions.
What's your podcast called, Lauren, so people can
Yeah,
listen?
I love that little plug. It's called Thrive and Thread. And
Ooh.
yeah, there is an episode titled Expanding Our Capacity for Uncomfortable Emotions. And I talk about that topic not only in the entrepreneurial space, but in any space. If you can expand your capacity to hold sadness, confusion, boredom, impatience, anxiety, you know, all of these different things that we experience in a given day, it I feel like it makes you more resilient, and not resilient in the way of like, oh, push through, harden yourself so that you can take on anything in the world, but resilience as a way to be malleable and flexible in how you respond in a given moment.
And I'm curious about, as someone who is very energetically in sync with who they are as a human, I've noticed that you've been able to take what you've gone through and just like utilize it for good, because you're taking all of these lessons and you're creating lessons for other people to learn in a safe container, as opposed to having them learn it themselves. And so
Mm.
you are building this community. But when it comes to your intuition, some key indicators that signal to you, I think I'm energetically in a place where I should move forward with this? Or how do you know whether or not it's anxiety or fear that's leading you, or general health and intuition?
Mm. That's so good. I err on the lines of like confusion to me isn't, let me rephrase that. I say something along the lines of like, if there's confusion, then that's like, I don't think that's coming from God. And
It's
that's
good.
that could be like a controversial statement or any type of statement, take it as you will.
Hmm.
Um, but as far as like intuition and knowing what I'm feeling, returning to the body, right? The body doesn't lie, but you have to discern whether it's actual fear or excitement or good stress, right? Sometimes we feel stress. It's not always bad stress. Sometimes that stress enables us to do really incredible things. So, as far as like knowing when to move forward, it's a mix of have I checked in with God? Have I brought this before Him? And how does it feel in my spirit? Right. So, if I look at things logically, technically, I should have stopped doing the lion's den a while ago, right? If we just looked at it for what had happened. Um, but again, I said the calling was so strong that I knew I had to move forward. And I think, you know, as humans, we want to see the whole picture. We want to know everything that's going to happen. And it's like, that's totally not possible. And so, how can you really, like you said earlier, be in the dance, stay in the dance of moment by moment that, okay, I don't need to know what's going to happen next week or a year from now. I just need to make the best decision with what I've got. And also letting go of that pressure that there's a right decision and a wrong decision has been really liberating. I think it's more so what's the best decision with what you have. Um, you know, and just trusting that like, okay, if that decision doesn't go well, I can pivot because I've pivoted every single time up until this moment. Um, and so yeah, I think one thing too that I want to name is what does peace feel like and how do you know you're experiencing it? And because peace doesn't mean absence of stress or hardship. Peace means like an acceptance and ability to withstand what's happening in your world in a given moment.
This is not the absence of stress and hardship. It's the acceptance of whatever's been given to you in the moment. That's good. Because I think that doesn't just apply to like career direction or relationship direction, even if you take it that route. It applies to everything. You know, should I go to the grocery store at night or in the morning? There's no right or wrong decision. It's just what will happen will happen. I can relate to a lot of what you're saying because I told you pre-interview that I recently got licensed, and I feel like there's this feeling that I thought I'd have once I got it, but I still feel like the same person. But I feel like the anxiety of like the next thing, like is gone. But it's also made me, I guess, present in my relationships because I knew I would always get here. And so it's getting over the shock of these new transitions and like learning to navigate my romantic relationship and how my career identity is changing my romantic relationship and changing my familial relationship, where it's just so interesting how one affects the other that affects the other. And so your insight about it's not about never being stressed. It's just, you know, what you have is what you have. And so how can you build insight in this present moment and learn to navigate things with a level of peace that if you do believe in a God or you believe in a higher power, even logic, if you're an atheist, like things will inevitably work out if you set a direction toward where you want to go. So I'm still sitting with that. Really powerful. I do want you to plug Lion's Den because I feel like we've been building up to this point of how you got here and the lessons you got out of the way. But tell me how Lion's Den started and where it's come in this present day and why you continue to push through in this business.
Well, thank you, Helen. Thanks for just creating such a beautiful space for vulnerability. I know the Yellow Chair community is so grateful for what you've been able to do here. The Lion's Den just came from me wanting to host a dance class for my friends. At the time, it was like 2015, and I wanted to host a choreography class for my friends without them having to do all the admin things that are required when you join a quote unquote studio, at least back in the day. Like 2015 day, this is like pre class pass. This is pre a lot of things that we know of. There weren't a lot of adult dance classes, and I wanted to make something that was accessible and affordable. So I started, I was teaching at a bar studio in Vienna, and I asked the owner if I could start renting the space. And
you just dropped Vienna like it was nothing. Just I was in Vienna.
Vienna, okay. Virginia. Well, I need to clarify that.
I was like, dang, she was in Europe.
Oh my gosh, let's manifest that from me in this future. I am down for that. But yeah, Vienna, Virginia, and it was kind of like I was already exercising these entrepreneurial skills back then without even realizing it. I created this class. I made these like really ugly flyers on this old app. This is before Canva. And this is back when Instagram had all those like not so cute filters and stuff like that. And you could only post photos back then as well. Like I'm really dating myself here. And that's what I did. I think I was one of the first within the DMV community. DMV stands for DC, Maryland, Virginia. One of the first to kind of just be hosting their own thing without being like a staff at a studio. I was still teaching at studios, but I wanted something where I had complete freedom and liberty to pick and choose. And that's kind of how it started. And then I also hosted a freestyle dance session or an open styles dance session, which means it's not a class and you have dancers coming in to just session or cypher. So cypher is those dance circles that you see where there's one dancer in the middle and then, people on the outside of the circle, like hyping them up. And so I already started kind of bridging these two entities of the dance community. If you're familiar with dance and the arts, you might separate into different categories of street dance and choreo or choreography world. And I was a practitioner in both. So I was a street dancer as well as a choreography dancer. And so it was really beautiful to bring two different types of communities into the same space. Fast forward, it turns into Baha'i Base, which was a brick and mortar with my ex. It was thriving at the time that we had it. We brought in a lot of big dancers in the community, like Buddha Stretch, Boogie Frantic, just big names within the street dance culture. And then that ended. And then I took my time to heal in New York. And then August 2017, I was like, okay, I'm going to bring the Lions Den back, even if it feels like it's all by myself. Because Baha'i Base, I had a team, but it was my ex and his friends that were really supporting that. So when I restarted the Lions Den, it felt like it was just me, which is not necessarily true. I had friends that were helping me out in different ways, but I reserved space at a grocery store conference room in Alexandria, and we were in a conference room and there's no mirrors, there's no AC, there's no speaker. It was really like just from the ground up. It felt like breaking down a church. Like we would have to break down the tables and the chairs, put them away. And for sign in, it was like a notebook and then like a crayon box, like pencil case to take cash. And I was charging probably like $7 to $10 for the class. That August 2017 in the grocery store conference room to where we are now is wild. We are a 2024-2025 curator for the Reach at the Kennedy Center, meaning we're going to be facilitating 4 dance activations throughout the year. We get booked to do so many different things, and we offer dance classes, wellness classes, dance parties every other month. And the brand and the community has just grown so much. So a lot of people reference us as like the launch pad for the dance community, meaning people come into the DMV, they don't know where to start, or they're newer to dance. We're kind of that launch pad, and then we support them in finding other spaces that could facilitate and support their practice wherever they're trying to go. So yeah, I would say we're probably the friendliest dance space in the DMV, but you're getting professional quality training as well.
Yeah. And then speak about just the incorporation of mental health and somatic work into your dance practice.
Yeah. So I started adding yoga and meditation and journaling over the last few years. There was definitely this resistance to add a wellness component to the Lion's Den. I was kind of afraid, to be honest, right? I'm like, I don't know if this will work. I don't know if people will respond to it. And I think that there's a crossover between communities. Not all dancers are into wellness and not all wellness folks are into dance, but then there's also the folks who are into both. And so we cater to everyone because everyone needs to feel a sense of safety and confidence in their own body. And so I started hosting virtual retreats called Root to Rise. And then I created a program called Confidence, I will be facilitating that at the upcoming Entwine retreat on
Hosted
Saturday.
by Yellow Chair Collective
Yes.
and Entwine Community.
Yes. Happening November 2nd.
Links down below.
Yes. Come meet me in person. Come experience it. And so Confidence is a program that I built that is about cultivating confidence from the inside out through movement, journaling, playfulness, positive psychology, and things of that sort. And so I have a personal brand, which is Lauren DeVera, also my podcast, Thrive and Thread, where we integrate some of these things into the Lion's Den. There is this holistic approach, right? Even if you're taking a dance class with us, mindfulness is incorporated into that. Awareness is incorporated into that. Confidence building is incorporated into that. We're not just a place where you come in, take a class, and leave. We're really about nurturing the people within the space and educating them on how having this holistic way of being is really supportive for your art practice.
That's good.
Thank you.
You said something to me, Lauren. Do you have time for one more reflection?
Yes.
You said something to me last time we talked where you said, I used to think dance was my talent, but now going through the mental challenges that I've been through, I realize that community building is my real talent. And
Dang.
I don't know if people have as much insight taking pain into this progress that you've created because like, yes, the truth of the matter is that you've become naturally good at what you do. But on the surface, people think that it's a dance practice, but it's actually a community practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to hold space for the fact that you are a servant to this mission. And it's so cool to watch because I know how hard you work every day. Just being an entrepreneur is not easy.
Yeah.
Like you have to kind of set your own boundaries. No one is holding you accountable except yourself. You have to reach out to your own network and your own accountability. But the fact that you've been going strong for the last, however many years, 10 years since you've started this entrepreneurship journey is just wild. Despite every hardship, despite every knockdown, like you're using those pains and helping other people get through it so that they're not alone. And so I just want to thank you. Thank you for your story and your vulnerability.
Oh, thank you for articulating it in different ways. I think that's so powerful, right? The power of language, the way that you're able to like take a look into my world and phrase it in such a way that's like, oh yeah, I am cool, or I am dope, right? Yeah, I just want to thank you for your space holding today, and also just to leave with our listeners and our community that you are going to face hardship, and hardship is not a sign to quit. A hardship sometimes is just a test to see if you are able to continue through that, not in such a way that you're not honoring yourself, but in such a way that you're building and equipping yourself with the skills that are necessary for growth. There are many things that I wanted a few years ago that now I recognize I was not ready for. And so, if there's something that you're reaching for, applying for, and you're not getting it and you're feeling frustration, just trust that it doesn't mean it's not for you. It's just not the right timing. And so timing is a huge part of this. Patience is a huge part of this. And if you err on the side of like being a big planner or, dare I say a type A person, sometimes this journey can feel like it's not working, but there really has to be an air of flexibility and patience. And non-attachment to the outcome. I think the reason I have been able to continue is because I never set hard goals for myself. The only goal was to continue to show up. That's it. And on the days that I can't show up, then you delegate it to other people or you press the pause button. The world will be okay without you for a few days if you need to log off or if you need to cancel that event. Like, don't be afraid to cancel and pause. It'll be fine. It'll all be fine. But as I tell my clients, the world doesn't need you burnt out. They need you rested. So please prioritize your rest.
And that's so good. By that, I mean, I feel like you're talking to the Asian American immigrant high achiever, oldest child in me. And you're speaking to me right now of you don't need to have everything planned out. You just need to show up, be consistent. And you can't be consistent if you're always tired. That's so good. But I need to respect your time because you have things to do. So I'm just going to stop recording. And Lauren, thank you so much.
Thank you.